Alright, we are recording for chapter 19 of Star Trek the Motion Picture novelization. Um, this will hopefully be a short video because I'm feeling a little under the weather and that might come through in my voice. Not sure, but want to do the video. Anyway, yeah. So, Ilea has been taken, and Decker's response, initially what he does, I'm okay with. But then there's a line later that I have highlighted that I do have an issue with. The initial thing he does is just turns to her and tells her to use in lingo code to and it just occurred to me that actually doesn't make any sense, but anyhow, to transmit the life support requirements for Deltans. So basically, they took her, they might not know how to keep her alive on their ship, so need to tell them. Lingo code has not been explained in a way that would make sense, though. I mean, like earlier when I was talking about how, the whole trying to communicate they're friendly, they would talking about how, we're saying the value of pi, value of the speed of light, some stuff about molecule reactions, molecular interactions. It's like, okay, how does that provide the context and information of, this level of oxygen, this level of nitrogen, this temperature, this level of humidity, and this gravity, and so. No. And this air pressure, there's a lot there that it feels like lingo code is just a generic. Just people are expected to understand this. Like, no. I just, no. At this point, it seems to be it's whatever. It's just a don't think about a thing, and I want to think about it. So there's that, but it's also, undoubtedly they should have sent a similar message when the security man Phillips disappeared. They'd simply assumed that the bright flash of his disappearance was destruction, but since both the plasma energy probe and Ilea had vanished together, it was more likely it had been part of a transportation system. It's like, so at least it is mentioned the whole, we didn't even try that for the human, but we're doing it for her. But as it points out, it is a different circumstance, but there is still the element of, man, we just thought he was dead. It would be funny if he were to show back up and be like, wait, you did that for... What the hell, man? I mean, I get it. It's a red shirt, and I'm not an officer, but come on. But to be fair, though, I'm assuming he was killed. He was killed, like, seconds prior, so it's not that big a deal, but still, it's funny. Now, this other thing, though, that I do have highlighted here, I got issues with this. Meanwhile, the agony in Decker's expression made it clear that he was feeling greater affection for Ilea than he had realized he carried. Okay. Previously, and I did not say this, but I think it is actually in the movie, if you only know that there's a line in the movie about him basically admitting that if he had stayed a little longer on Delta, whatever, her homeworld, or that if he had gone to say goodbye to her, he would not have been able to leave. Okay? He would have had to leave Starfleet to stay with her. That's quite clear of saying, I'm going to commit to you more than I'm committed to Starfleet. That's a big commitment. Okay, so it's, in other words, we can at least imply from that, it's maybe less accurate, but he would have married her. You don't need to tell us that he had a greater affection for Ilea than he realized. No, we don't need that. We can already understand that from what was stated before. There was already great affection. What it should be saying here, in my opinion, is rather he is not able to hide it anymore, because he has had to hide it. Okay? He cannot let anyone else know because of the potential conflict there. There would be an issue, and that would be something that Kirk and McCoy even could potentially say, you cannot be executive officer, and you need to be off the bridge. Because if your emotions are going to compromise your ability to function properly here and in the chain of command, when she's around, you have to be gone. So he had to hide it. Now that she's gone, and in the way she is gone, him not hiding that anymore, that makes sense. And it's not it's even more than before. He wanted to marry her is a very, very reasonable assumption to make, very reasonable inference to make from what had been said previously. And you don't need to say, he loved you even more than that. No. Unnecessary. Just let it be. He is not able to hide it anymore because he is scared. So he cannot so consciously suppress that. Right? He is scared and he is starting to show that. That would have been better. Okay? Because this is just, as I said, we already know this. So you don't need to you don't need to try to push it further. We know it already. Let it just be. He can't hide it anymore. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Spock turned back to the science console and began to run low-power sensor scans. You idiot. I'm sorry. One. Spock was in motion. Even as Kirk spoke, the Vulcan was locking his hands together overhead, and now he brought them down in a tremendous two-handed chop into the computer pedestal. Literally. Last page of the previous chapter. See that second highlight? That's what I just read about him going to the science console, which he had just destroyed, at least part of, in order to prevent the probe from getting access to the main computer. Which his console uniquely, for whatever reason, remember I criticized that in the previous video, for whatever reason, his console has direct access to that. That access was a problem. Accessing and the probe scanning engineering, that's fine. That is so stupid, but regardless, that's what's... His console is down. The science console has been damaged to the point that this probe could not... would have lost access to the main computer. This is, and hang on, let me just, I'll just try to see if I can find it. Where is it? Okay, yeah. Then Kirk reacted in the previous chapter, alarmed as he saw the science computer flash into life, too. Spock's computer was the only one which interconnected directly with the starship's main computer. The science computer and then Spock's computer, in theory, you might say, oh, well, those are two separate things. Got some problems with that. One is there's no reason to believe that it would be separate since Spock is just a science officer. He wasn't assigned to the ship when it was being refit. He had left Starfleet. He's come back. So, no, this is the science console computer there that has direct access that Spock crushed. And now he's using it as though nothing was wrong with it. This is and we're talking about literally one page, next page. Well, might be more than a page later if it's leaving a blank page because it always wants the chapter starting at odd pages. But still, it's like... This is a major problem, a major inconsistency, and it just... I refuse to dismiss this as a simple or basic mistake, as something that a first-time novelist may have made a mistake of. For one thing, Roddenberry, at this point, would have had decades of writing experience behind him, okay? You need to understand, he not only wrote a fair amount for Star Trek, like, wrote it up originally, rewrote things that other people done, but he also had written a number of westerns before that. He was a very accomplished writer. This kind of mistake, he should have caught, and I cannot be like, oh, youthful, inexperienced, which I'm kind of okay with, going back to the Star Wars novelization, the New Hope novelization, because I defended some of the stuff that it read like a first-time novel, somebody's first novel. It doesn't read that way, and his skill would have been so developed at this point, he should not be making those kinds of mistakes. And even then, this is not a mistake I think should exist at that level, because even just you read through to do your own edit, you should notice, wait a minute, I just said it was destroyed, I need to fix this. Or an editor should read through it and be like, hang on, didn't you just say this was destroyed? That is so obvious that, yeah. It's funny, I feel kind of heated about this, and I don't really want to be, because I want this to be a short video, but it's just, this stuff is annoying me, and I got another inconsistency here. Red alert. Well, okay. The Enterprise is grabbed by a tractor beam and is dragging them down, right? Red alert, est Decker. Kirk shook his head. The Enterprise was still on yellow alert. All critical emergency stations were manned. A little bit later. Engineering, full emergency power. Kirk snapped the order into the intercom. Okay. My understanding for yellow and red alert is basically yellow alert is we need to be prepared because shit may happen. Red alert is shit's happening, right? Shit's happening. This is completely a time for red alert. You cannot go full emergency power and not be a red alert, okay? You cannot have a situation that you're going to, that it's like, we got to do something about this full emergency power, and it'd be like, nah, it's not red alert. It can say, this is inconsistent, and it's the only thing in between is just on the main view of the image of the alien ship. Continued growing as the tractor beam pulled them still closer. Decker was calling it for a relief crewman to take over at the navigator's console. It's like, so basically there's no time passing here clearly for like new thought. It's just going from, nah, we don't need red alert to, Scotty, put all the power you got into breaking us free of this. That is inconsistent. Like, no, stay calm, everything's fine. Scotty, do everything you can, we gotta get out of this. Okay. Okay. So Scotty mentions the whole, yeah, we really don't have the power to do this. And so Kirk's like, alright, don't worry about emergency power then. I mean, it's like, but he's not asking about emergency power. He was ordering it, and then it's like, yeah, dude, the intermix chamber's already like overheating. We really don't have the power for this. So Kirk's like, belay it then. I mean, it's like, come on, we can do better than this. So they are just allowing themselves to be dragged along, which, by the way, I am okay with. And there's actually something in here that I will get to that is an important point, both within the story, and I think it's told badly because of one specific thing. It's not quite one word that's triggering me, but a few words, but get to that. I'm just trying to explain that they are allowing themselves to be moved now. At least they've given up, they've resigned themselves to it. It was costing Decker some effort to appear to be making a routine executive officer's bridge circuit, and Kirk admired the success with which he was pulling it off. This is... I like this. I do. I respect this. Because Decker is in a very bad situation at the moment. He is freaking out over Ilea. Okay, he just is. That is a fact. And it is capturing that by saying he's having to force himself to do this, force himself to keep to his duties. And he should be admired for that, because he is inexperienced. And Kirk knows that, so it's like, you are doing a good job. Not to say it's easy, but that what you are doing is what you need to be doing. Kirk isn't going to say this right now, that'd be bad, but it could be said later, or put in as a commendation for him that, well, okay, to be fair, Kirk doesn't necessarily know about the relationship with Ilea, but it is still this is a bad situation. He is clearly doing his best to just make his rounds, do what he needs to be doing. That's what he needs, and you know what? That is what he needs to be doing. I mean, in one of the previous parts, I talked about, was kind of mentioned that the point of training is essentially to set new habits, so that even when something really bad oh yeah, that's right, it was, I don't remember the exact lines that were written, but it was about Kirk's reactions to things. It's like, part of the purpose to training, from my understanding at least, is you are trained to set new habits, so that when something happens, even something completely unpredictable, like this massive ship appearing and having such tremendous power, it doesn't matter. You fall back on your training, which is to go through these things so that you can be as ready as possible, but also as calm as possible. Decker technically is in a way calm. In a way. In that he is in control. He hasn't lost control. He's tempted to. He's having to force himself to do this, but and that is exactly what he's supposed to be doing. I applaud him doing that, and I like how it's written in here as well. So, and just, I feel like, and part of the reason why I want to talk about this, why I want the concept of training, is I do feel that's something a lot of people do not understand, do not recognize that is part of training. It's there are people that, yes, it is in them that when something bad happens, they run towards it. Like there's a fire, there's an explosion, they run towards it. There are people that is how they are wired to do, that's what they're going to do. But there are other people that are trained to do that. So they are rewired to do that. And of course, there are plenty of people that they're not rewired to, they're just trained, so when they are running, they know what they're going to do when they get there, kind of thing. That is still, there is a value there, and I think sometimes people do forget that. That it's like when you start seeing people not in stories not acting intelligently, not acting as they should. Not so much the acting contrary to their motivations, like I have issues with in some of the Star Wars novelizations. I'm actually trying to think. Well, would that be an example? No, that works. Okay. Those would be good examples. Actually, yes. Yeah. Okay. Yoda, at the end of Attack of the Clones, saving Anakin and Obi-Wan's life. We're going to ignore that Revenge of the Sith tries to say that Yoda would never have done that. Revenge of the Sith is a piece of crap book. Anyway, that is consistent because Yoda would have been trained, you'd expect, to always value and protect life. If needed, he will kill. If needed, he will take a life. But to sacrifice a life, to let one that he can save die, or in this case, to die, that should be basically he's wired to not allow that. He is wired to react. So him letting Dooku go makes sense. It would make, and therefore it also makes sense that it would take conscious effort for him to decide, no, I must capture or kill Dooku instead of saving them. Okay, so his training or his wiring would have been to save him. Now, for an example of where we're seeing the opposite, where you are trained to do one thing but you're not, the Dooku, Anakin, Obi-Wan fight at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. I hate that fight. For so many reasons, I hate that fight. And this is another way to put it. It's technically the same reason why I hate the fight that I've gone through before, but it is the idea that what it describes there, that Obi-Wan and Anakin are going in and basically playing with Dooku, that they're not taking it seriously, that they're using techniques they know Dooku can counter, they're not going as fast as they can, they're not going as strong as they can, for no reason other than just to be stupid. I mean, I'm sorry, it is such a dumb cliche and it should not be done. People should be better writers than that, certainly if they're getting to do something licensed like that. That it's like, no, you never do that. Anyway, that is contrary to your training. Because you need to, they're warriors, okay? Jedi Master and Jedi Knight, they are warriors. They need to understand, and they need to be trained, so when you write them, you need to understand, they are trained to attack and kill. Every strike needs to have at least lethal, the intent of lethal potential. That may sound weird, but by that I mean, even if Anakin and Obi-Wan were just training with each other, technically every single attack, like Anakin growing up, Obi-Wan, every single attack when training Anakin should be, if Anakin messes up, if Anakin makes a mistake, I am stabbing him and potentially harm him. Now, canonically, you can lower the energy of a lightsaber so it won't hurt. Well, it will hurt, but it won't cause like permanent damage. That is a thing. But it's like every single attack, Obi-Wan in that training, if Anakin screws up, it needs to be okay. I just cut off your head. And you feel it going across your body. I went like that, so I'm trying to maintain that. But even across the neck or whatever, or into the whatever, he'd need to every single attack be that. So then the idea of being in a fight with Dooku and not doing that, not to the best of your skill, be reacting to Dooku's attacks, so you're learning Dooku and can attack, but also to just not be taking advantage of, hey, I know I can hit him, but I'm not going. That is completely contrary to training and is wrong. I guess another way to put it, I got so many ways. I love talking about stories. I love sharing. Okay. I don't remember the name of the episode. It's in season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where there's the Karami Master of Stratagema. Is that it? Stratagema Game Master. That Riker first goes against him and is defeated pretty quickly. But even Riker's like, yeah, I knew I was going to lose. It's an honor to go against this guy. And they put Data up against him because Data with the cybernetic, the positronic brain should be such a match. It would be very interesting, but it's actually very rapidly defeated. Now, the reason why is because the Master just set a trap for him, and Data's brain is trained to go after and try to achieve a victory as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible, so it fell for the trap. At the end of the episode, kind of a spoiler, but whatever, Data does that rewiring. So he goes against his training, he sets new training, which was to pass it up and always maintain a balance. Always maintain 50-50 with the guy, so Data would never win, but neither would the other guy. And it works. It actually frustrates the guy who then just quits out of the game and is like, I've never been so insulted in my life. Because Data's technically not playing the game, he's playing the player. But it is still, that kind of thing where Data's training, yes, it led to his defeat because he didn't understand that nuance of the traps, but it still is. He was following his training, so he then had to retrain himself in order to achieve a kind of victory. He busted him up. So it's, yeah. How long did I spend on that? I'm sorry. I'm going to repeat myself one more time. Training is important, and I do feel that there are things in newer stories where that can be forgotten. Or at least that it does seem in some cases people, when looking at reality, make statements that it's clear you don't understand that isn't how things work. And I will in part say that's because stories being told today are not properly conveying how things do work, and that includes training. Alright, moving on. Had they annoyed it angrily enough, had they annoyed it into angrily crushing them against its side? Kirk is wondering this, concerning the whole distractor beam on the Enterprise. This is a stupid thought. And he's kind of freaking out about it. Doesn't help that they finally moved into position, and then they see that, oh, the thing's opening up, big enough to swallow the Enterprise. And Sulu even says it's opening like a maw. And Kirk, the narrator is saying for Kirk, it's like, yeah, that's an apt description, but I really wish he hadn't used that term. But Kirk then has a response. All decks attention, Kirk keyed his intercom, trying to sound matter-of-fact. This is the captain speaking. It should be obvious that the vessel out there could have destroyed us long ago if its crew meant us any harm. It seems probable that we are being moved to a place or compartment of their vessel possibly, where we hope communication between us and them can be facilitated. That is actually very good line. It's a very good statement there. Fully approve. But it continues. Kirk knew that his announcement, laced with probably and possibly, really said nothing, but he could already see some relief on a couple of faces. No, it said a lot, okay? I don't like how this has been. That is dismissive of his statement. No, his statement was very good. Because it's true. And that's the whole thing with the crushing against. Why would you think? I mean, I get it as a brief flash of a thought, but then you throw it away. Why would they be, grabbing us with a tractor beam and bringing us down towards the ship, towards the alien ship? They were. I'm trying to remember how far away. Let's say a kilometer away. They're brought down to 100 meters away, so much closer. But it's like, why would you even think? Because it's like, they have so many ways of destroying the Enterprise. Well, Vidra has so many ways to destroy the Enterprise that you've already seen. And even the tractor beam itself could be used to crush the Enterprise. That's been spoken of in, like, the series, the television series. Why would you be like, yeah, I want to destroy that. Crash. Why would you do that? That's really dumb. It's not, the Enterprise is not, like a beer can or something that some people are stupid enough and crush those against their head. I mean, it's like, you wouldn't do that. That makes no sense. So the statement of, the whole, they could have destroyed us long ago if they meant us any harm. It's like, yes, that is a completely rational statement. That's the kind of statement Kirk, as the captain, should be making. Because it's telling everyone, look, we don't know what's happening, but we don't actually need to worry, because if it was going to be bad, it would have been bad earlier. We don't know what's going on, but calm down and keep to your stations. Keep doing what you're supposed to. Follow your training. Keep doing that. We'll keep going, okay? Right now, we don't know what's going on. He's not saying that out loud, but it's like, we don't exactly know what's going on. We just know what isn't happening. We're not being harmed, because it would have done that already if it wanted to. So to be dismissive of that, I hate. And this is also, as the captain, saying that, such a big deal. Because being the leader of the ship, and we're going to set aside Kirk for the moment. That's Kirk for the moment. It's important because it is a way to amend the morale of the crew. I'm not saying necessarily boost it, but it's like, get them to focus, get them to calm down. This is good. Okay? It is exactly what a captain should be doing, exactly what a leader should be doing. But now you bring Kirk into this. The living legend, Kirk. You're actually in a really good spot now, because, I mean, him saying this is like, he knows what he's talking about. And on top of that, not only does he know what he is talking about, but he will get us through this. All right? He's right. They don't mean to harm us. They would have already. So whatever's going on, I need to be ready for when he gives me the order to do something. Because when he gives me that order, whatever that order is, it's most likely what will keep us alive and get us out of here. And with a successful mission. That's what I need to do. Yep. So I don't like this dismissiveness. Now, somebody could argue, and it would be fair. Not the way it's written here. Someone could argue that Kirk is not aware of this. That Kirk sees it as, I just told them nothing, but it doesn't make any difference. I get that, but the way it's the narrator talking, not Kirk. If it was in Kirk's own thoughts, fine. Then I could say he's an idiot, and he is, if he thought this. But it's the narrator saying it as though confirming that this is in fact the case. But no, what he said does not mean it. He did not really say nothing. He did say something very important. And it's also Kirk would be aware of, the importance of this statement. So yeah, no, I've got. No, I am just annoyed by this. It should have been written differently. With more not that he said nothing, but that what he said, though a rational guess, it may only serve the purpose of have to remind. Yeah, apparently, sorry, I was looking after the highlight. You could already see some relief on a couple of faces. It's like that, yes. That while it's a rational guess, it is still a guess, but it is providing relief. That should have been the focus, not the really said nothing. No, he said something because of this. Another thing here that I just found odd. We were being pulled through with ample clearance on all sides. It was the replacement navigator checking her maneuver monitor. Kirk gave her an approving glance, searching for the name. Yes, DeFalco. There might be something about her worth remembering. Huh? What the hell kind of statement is that? I'm saying, okay, you established before that he spent the time meeting everyone to learn their names, which is awesome. I'm terrible with names, but it's like Kirk doing this is like that's big. And what was it? There was something I'd seen. It was a piece of trivia. It may have been connected to Star Trek: The Original Series. It may have been connected to something else. Where there was an actor or actress. I think it was an actress, and it may have been like Betty Davis even, which would mean it's not connected to Star Trek. But it was something like this person was a legitimate star, right? But spent the time to actually meet all of the crew. And it was one of those things where it was fairly minor, and plenty of people would think it was just you do this to be friendly, to be polite, and that's it. But so many years later, was then one of the people on the crew was the same one as before. The person walked up and was like, "Hey, how you doing? How's your kid?" It's like, remembered all the names. Years later, remember all the names. And actually, that's awesome, but this is like, there might be something about her worth remembering. I don't even think that line should be in there. Just Kirk gave her an approving glance, searching for the name, yes, DeFalco. That's it. There might be something about her worth remembering. That is just so condescending. There might be something about her worth remembering. She's here doing her job. That's all we know about her and her name. And that you remembered it. That's it. That's all you need to say. We don't need more than this. This is, unless it's going to be something that's like too stereotypically Kirkish, where it's like he's thinking about her measurements or something because of how many women did he sleep with in the original series or something. I was like, what? I'm a little triggered. I'm a little heated, but it is just I do not understand why the line is there, and I really dislike that line being there. I just feel it adds nothing and is condescending, and I see no reason for it to be. Spock tries scanning, nothing doesn't get anything back. Everything's just reflecting. But also, he tries to do the mental connection. Basically, all he gets is that I believe they have a bottomless hunger for knowledge. Spock continued. It was a hunger which Spock shared. Yeah. Yeah, he wondered if this was a thread which could lead to some kinship. I'm okay with this. It is just a little interesting how it is put. And it is fair that you need to state it was a hunger which Spock shared. Because there's a certain reality that, yes, there were 3 years of television episodes prior to this establishing all these characters, but technically somebody can be reading this that doesn't know that isn't familiar with it. So I am good with that. I'm actually kind of wondering, why did I even bother highlighting this? Okay, did I highlight that? Okay, no, I did, but it's a little later. So within the compartment, they notice unusual shapes and patterns appeared and vanished continually. And I'm wondering, when I highlighted this, I was thinking, because in the movie, shapes are being shown where it's like, that looks like a planetary system. That's Epsilon 9. Like, you're seeing the things that V'ger scanned to the point, like, destroyed, but integrated into its memory, being projected around. And I'm wondering if that's technically what these shapes are, that we're seeing them now, or if that's going to be later. I don't like the description that is given. I get the whole describing it as though this is just a normal part of the function of the ship. I'm okay with that. It does describe that way. But the way it describes is though, oh yeah, so it's just, forming its engines out of energy and just blinking them into existence when it needs them, and then they go away, they fade away. It's like, why would you do that? I mean, there are components of a ship that are needed so regularly. They just exist. You wouldn't have them popping in and out for energy. Well, in and out and being made of energy. I guess a way to put it, imagine a Star Trek ship sufficiently far in the future. In theory, the Prometheus in that one episode of Voyager, which has hollow emitters throughout the ship. It would be like saying, okay, instead of having crew quarters, we're just going to have the walls and such, all the furniture be holograms. In a way, that actually makes sense if you have the energy to power it. But in a way, that makes sense because then you can adapt the quarters to the crew at a whim. It could be done very rapidly, very easily. I could see that working, or even just a recreation area in that as well. Have it be completely reactive. But engineering is still going to be solid because you kind of need that all the time. And there'd be other things as well. In theory, if you had a hydroponics bay, you would need that to be there all the time because living matter. But I mean, it's like I don't get why I was explaining it as though hang on, where is it? Because they do actually say it in here that they figure it's. Yeah. I believe the visible shapes and patterns to be energy fields, undoubtedly part of the vessel's mechanisms. This is Spock talking. And technology so incredibly sophisticated that I can't. Then we get a little bit more there. But it's just. Okay, I thought there was something a bit clearer. Oh yeah, undoubtedly representing some incredibly technology, which apparently use energy or some form of energy plasma, much like humans and others use matter for constructing bulkheads and engines and other shipboard necessities. That would be so wasteful. It's a really... I get the bulkheads, fine, but engines and shipboard necessities? No, that's just stupid. I would say having crew quarters, which can be variable, and in theory, you could just turn those off. And yeah, you've now lost your beds, but you got space now that maybe you need for something. I'm saying I'm fine with, but the idea of everything engine, I'm getting too technical. I know that, but and actually, second last highlight. So the tractor beam was released. They brought us to a halt, no forward motion, said Sulu, standing by and maneuvering thrusters. Hold stations, thrusters at station key. So that would be, okay, just match the movements so we always moving with them. That would be hold station. But halting, it's like, hang on. Last we were told V'ger was traveling at warp 7. Now, warp is not like other things, right? Because, in theory, you get something and you throw it in space because there's no friction, it'll just keep going in a straight line. Warp isn't like that because you're traveling at an unnatural speed. So to my mind, it's like, okay, that has to be something active. And I don't trust, it's not been mentioned, it's not been explained that because, in fact, it would have had to have been because, okay. Oh, but the Enterprise is now within the ship that is traveling at warp, and so for that reason, that means that it is safely within that warp field, and so it's traveling in warp with the ship. Except, how did it make the transition from the Enterprise's warp field to V'ger's? Because these are two different warp fields, potentially made by two completely different... In fact, it's even possible that V'ger isn't using warp technology, it's using a different technology that allows it to travel at warp 7. We just call it warp 7 because we recognize it as that speed, but that doesn't, a jet engine going at Mach 5 and a rocket engine going at Mach 5 are different types of engines. It's just still Mach 5. Okay, I mean, so yeah, we do need an explanation here, right? And I don't like it being halted. That's the main thing. It's the wrong word. You cannot have all of your no forward motion. It's like, no, there has to be forward motion because you might not be moving relative to the ship, relative to the alien. That's fine. But Sulu should say that then. Because otherwise it's no, you're you're still moving, or V'ger has stopped. Which, why you think V'ger has stopped? Why you'd even be aware V'ger has stopped? I got no idea. Although, actually, no, I take that back, because the whole thing I'm talking about, how warp is so different from other means of travel, that if they were to stop, I do think it is reasonable that they would be aware, hey, we're not at warp anymore. Even without being able to see the stars, it's just, we're not at warp anymore. Things are not warped anymore. So yeah, that's either badly written or the wrong language. One or the other. And it is. The whole halt is not the right term in my opinion, and also no forward motion. It's like no forward relative motion to the alien. I'm like, that's all you'd have to do, but it's not what's being done here. So yeah. And yeah, it is also, like I said, yeah, sure, it enveloped the Enterprise, but it's maybe that means it's now in its warp field, and so will be carried along with the warp field if you maintain the relative. Why that would necessarily be the case? It's also kind of dangerous, because what if V'ger's warp changes? Then the Enterprise is like station keeping, and our thrusters gonna be able to compensate for that. But going back to what I said before, it's like, how are you crossing the warp field properly to achieve that? Okay, because I don't believe it's ever been said before that like if the Enterprise goes to warp, that if there happens to be a piece of dust near the hull of the Enterprise when they go, that suddenly that's accelerated. It's in the warp field, but it's not connected to the ship. I don't believe it ever said that that's been the case before. Yes, there was technically that whole wormhole thing that happened earlier when Asteroid was pulled in, but that also doesn't make any sense. It was an error that happened, and it also doesn't make any sense because the asteroid that was pulled in wasn't even visible to them initially, so it was real far away when it got pulled in, which actually makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, so it's like that. Yeah, you'd have to attach it. The only way that can make any sense is to say that, well, it wasn't the warp field, it was the wormhole, that's not how wormholes work. Set that aside for now. But it's like, the wormholes would pull that in, but the wormhole wasn't a warp field. So we actually still don't have any explanation for how the ship could enter another ship at warp like that. Yeah. If it were in TNG Deep Space Nine or Voyager, where it's a runabout shuttlecraft, something like the Delta Flyer, I'd be okay with it. Because it's the same technology. You know it's the same warp technology, so having them synchronized so you can merge the warp fields and go in, I'm okay with that. That's not necessarily what we're talking about here. Alright, final thing, intruder alert goes off. Deck 4, captain, officer's quarters. Chekhov answers the question. Spock, anything? Spock was shaking his head. I have no unusual power field readings from there, Captain. I should guess it's not their plasma energy probe this time. I'm getting a heat reading, something in the 1000 degree range. No, correct that, 950, and still dropping. Whatever is happening down there, it's cooling fairly rapidly. So that would be Chekhov responding. And then it's, alright. Yeah. Spock and Kirk are gonna head down, and this will be, they find Ilia there. Well, the Ilia drone robot thing. I don't recall in the movie being mentioned the high temperature, but it's like, I'm a little curious. Are we talking 1000 degrees Fahrenheit or centigrade? Celsius. It didn't say. Just said it that, right? I don't think it said. I just read it and I'm already... Yeah, just 1000 degree range. Like, depending, that's real hot. I mean, either way, it's really hot, but I'm just thinking, it's like, there are things that just being near there would start to burn. So I'm not the happiest with that. But I can understand the idea that if it were just formed from energy... Okay. If it were just formed from energy, I can understand the idea, but it just occurred to me, doesn't have to be the case, of it being very hot. And because, hey, it took so much energy to form this thing that it's still going to be radiating heat. But also just occurred to me, equals mc squared, yeah, you can go back and forth, but it's, if you have just enough energy to do that, to make to produce the formation of matter, then, then it wouldn't actually be hot. So yeah, it would not have to be hot. And it'd also be kind of, like with a transporter, when somebody is beamed one way or the other, they aren't superheated like that, so I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it'll be explained in the next chapter why Ilea's body was, this new Ilea was superheated. There's also the issue that if she still is biological, guess what doesn't survive 1,000-degree temperatures? Biological materials. So, yeah. It may kind of explain, though, because I do remember in the movie, they find her, like, in the shower. So it's like, alright, that would be a way to help cool off, although the water touching her skin would immediately boil, so that would be a problem. Yeah. Although one thing that did occur to me, that I could see it happening in the book. I don't know. But I said, she's in the shower. And after this, whenever they have her going around, she's in kind of a skimpy robe. I'm just like, not even to like halfway down the length of her thigh, as I recall. I'm trying to, I don't remember her getting out of the shower specifically in the movie. It's been a while since I watched it. But I would not be surprised if, because Vidra is supposed to be so rational and such, that when Kirk and Spock get there, her stepping out of the shower, that it does describe her as being nude. And, like, that Ilea doesn't even think, this version of Ilea doesn't even think about it. That's, like, doesn't understand the purpose of clothing. I think there is some lines like that, but I don't think that there's a, like, they have to convince her to put on clothes. I don't remember that in the movie. It has been a while. Granted, it has been a while. But I could definitely see there being a difference between movie and book, because you don't want to have to deal with that in a movie that probably had a PG rating. Whereas in a book, it's like, you can get away with it. Because also, you're not showing anything. It's just the idea. It's just the words of it. Yeah. So much for this being a short one. Sorry. But, I mean, in my defense, some of this stuff in this chapter, it was triggering rants for me. It happens. Alright, you know what? I actually do want to quickly just look. Okay, I'm not seeing too much except that it is Ilea's cabin. Security guards were there. The body is still cooling off. And was even described as was white hot a moment ago. I'm actually not sure. Sorry, it's just metals will get white hot at certain temperatures, but because that's black body radiation is based on the material that's being heated, I'm actually not sure at what point flesh could be white hot. I mean, it certainly would have already be thermally decomposing before that, but still, I'm kind of curious. But then that does also remind me, I think I had mentioned it previously in the Revenge of the Sith novelization videos. And I'll mention it again because it is kind of sort of relevant. I once was connected with a guy in a forum who, just somebody else who's there, who's also, we were both on staff. His brother or brother-in-law got a face transplant. Because at one point he came across like live power lines that had fallen, and the electricity was going in his leg and out of his face, and when the EMTs got to him, it was mainly described that his skull was glowing. So, and I remember I mentioned that with Palpatine, because like, actually, no, you can survive that. Yeah, I still remember part of that story, including the whole, ironically, they had to defibrillate him a few times. So it was like he just had a power line running through his body, and they needed to shock him in the ambulance. But he survived and needed the face transplant because when electricity is exiting your face and your skull is in the temperature of your skull is enough to be glowing through your skin. Yeah, you need that. You do kind of need a face transplant, but it's also one of those things that his brain survived that. That's kind of wild. Because you would think if the skull is... Maybe it was just the face, just the front portion. That could make sense. If it was... Because electricity is weird. It likes to travel over the surface of things. But even if it were going in, if it could exit out here, or even out here, so further away from the brain, it wouldn't be doing anything back here. The heat may travel, but I don't think bone's a good conductor. But still, Ilea's flesh, in theory, would not be able to survive that temperature. But maybe there would be parts for that. Although true, she's also doubted. Well, no, she should be. I'm sorry, I'm ranting again. But it's just... It's that whole technical mind thing where it's like, you get... And I've got enough memory that it's like... I'm like... Just keep going through it all. So, anyway. Where the hell's the cursor? There it is. Alright. See you next time.